My name is Grace Turner. I'm 32 and last week my sister destroyed my wedding. Not by missing it, by knocking over a $3,000 cake. Because I refused to buy her a condo for her 21st. The room froze. Frosting slid down the tablecloth like melting snow. Leah's dress caught the top tier. Gasps, phones half raised. And Kendra, she just laughed. Oops. My mother's voice followed, soft, practiced. You know how she gets when she's disappointed. The champagne still bubbled. Everyone pretended it was fine. I didn't. That night, I canceled her lease cosign, froze the moving fund, deleted every favor she'd ever owed. At 9:42 a.m., the notice went out. If disappointment was her reason, ending was mine. Kendra's mistakes always came wrapped in apologies she never made. When she was 16, she crashed my car. Mom said, "At least she's safe." When she failed 2 college classes, I rewrote her appeal letter so she could stay enrolled. She got reinstated. I got silence. It became routine, her need my solution. When rent was late, I covered it. When her card declined, I paid. When she said, "I'll pay you back," I knew it was fiction. Mom called it help, but help stopped being help. When it became expectation. Last month, she texted me a condo listing, thinking this one for my 21st. Attached was the price, $72,000. No question mark, no shame. Then the TikTok came. A slow pan over marble countertops. Caption, manifesting this. Please ignore my broke sister. Blocking the blessing lol. That's when it shifted. Not because she mocked me, because she made it public. Turned my boundaries into betrayal, my silence into cruelty. I remembered being 13, standing on the beach with her screaming for my boogie board. I said no. She cried. I got grounded. Mom's words. She's younger, don't escalate. So I learned not to escalate, not to speak, to swallow things that should have been addressed. Every favor became a receipt I was never allowed to show. Every boundary turned into a problem I was told to fix. And somewhere along the way, they mistook my silence for consent, my composure for compliance, my generosity for duty. That's how it happens, one favor at a time, until debt becomes identity. I wasn't the sister who helped anymore. I was the system she used. The night after the wedding, I couldn't sleep. Not from heartbreak, from clarity. I sat at my kitchen table in my dress, half undone, frosting still on the hem. The house smelled like champagne and silence. Leah had gone to bed hours ago. I stayed up, scrolling through folders on my laptop. Kendra lease, moving fund, $12,000. Every receipt, every transfer, every proof of generosity. I'd kept them like records, not revenge, until now. At 1:12 a.m., I opened the leasing portal. My name glowed at the bottom of the page, co-signer. One click, gone. Then the bank app, freeze fund. Done. The cursor blinked, waiting for confirmation. It felt like breathing again. By 9:42 a.m., the notice would land in her inbox. No message, no explanation, just the echo of accountability. At 8:17, my phone buzzed. Family group chat. Fam updates. Kendra. What is this? The leasing office says the co-signer is gone. Another ping. Did you cancel it? Are you serious? Then Mom. Sweetheart, I'm sure this is a mistake. Can we please talk first? I let the phone face down. It kept lighting up, frantic. The noise felt distant, like static underwater. At 9:42, the notification hit. Right on time. At 9:43, she called. I answered. Her voice was high, sharp, practiced hurt. I'm standing in the leasing office, Grace. Do you know what this means? I could lose this place. I didn't raise my voice. Yes, I said. I know what it means. A pause. You did this on purpose. You knocked over our wedding cake on purpose. Another pause, shorter this time. She didn't deny it. That's not the same, she snapped. That was a moment. I was emotional. And I'm logical, I said. So I made a logical choice. She laughed. That hollow practice sound. You're so dramatic, it was a cake. Get over it. Then she hung up. No apology, no regret, just the click of entitlement. I stared at the phone until the screen went black. Then I whispered, not dramatic, just done. I walked the rooms like a landlord of my own peace, gathered leftover favors into a box, rinsed frosting from the hem, took the spare key from under the planter, changed the door code and logged out shared apps, muted the family thread and set it to auto-archive. Small clicks, small closures, real ones. At the sink, the water ran cold then clear. I made coffee I didn't need and watched it steam. The house felt different. Not empty, just mine again. For once, the quiet wasn't punishment. It was policy. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard. Mom called it a family reset. Sunday noon, her house, pancakes and peace. Leah didn't want to go. She already knew the script. I went anyway. I needed to hear the lines out loud. The table was staged like a commercial. Flowers, berries, warm syrup, practice smiles. Kendra wore sunglasses indoors, nursing a performance headache. Dad stared at his plate like it held answers. No one said cake. No one said condo. No one said 9:42 a.m. Mom floated between chairs, buttering silence. Coffee, orange juice, fresh fruit? She finally sat and sighed theatrically. We've all made mistakes lately, she began. Maybe it's time to forgive. Leah's hand found mine under the table. Not a warning, an anchor. I set down my fork. Okay, I said. Let's talk mistakes. The room tightened. Kendra rolled her eyes behind designer lenses. Let's talk about a 3,000er cake, I said. How it fell the moment I said no to 72,000. It was an accident, Mom replied quickly. She was emotional. Weddings are stressful. Emotional isn't gravity, I said. And stress doesn't bend elbows toward a cake. Kendra huffed. Oh my God, still with the cake? I turned to her. You asked for a condo as a gift. I said no and you destroyed my centerpiece. That's not clumsy, that's targeted. That's dramatic, she snapped. You love being the victim. Funny, I said quietly. Because you love the spotlight. And this is how you grab it. Dad cleared his throat. Maybe this isn't the place. It's exactly the place, I answered. Because this is where it lives. The smiles, the gloss, the let's move on. Where accountability goes to die. Mom's mouth flattened. Grace, be reasonable. I've been reasonable for years, I said. I co-signed leases. I funded emergencies. I fixed problems I didn't create. And every time you called it help. Until help became expected. Kendra's jaw trembled, not shame, impatience. You could have just helped again. I did, I said. I helped by ending it. I helped by telling the truth with paperwork. Mom leaned forward, voice soft, weaponized. She's younger, she's fragile, you're strong. Strong doesn't mean I don't bleed, I said. It means you expected me to bleed quietly. Silence sat down and joined us. It felt honest for once. Leah squeezed my hand once. I stood, pushed back my chair. I won't fund or forgive performances, I said. If you want repair, start with responsibility. Mom exhaled like a prayer misfired. Dad didn't look up. Kendra stayed seated, sunglasses on, pride louder than apology. Leah and I walked to the door. No one followed. No one called my name. Their silence told the truth better than words. On the porch, the sun felt new. Ready? Leah asked. Ready, I said. They fear noise. I fear comfortable lies. For 24 hours, my phone was a siren. Texts, voicemails, paragraphs, ultimatums dressed as love. Kendra started with shock. Fix this, I'm literally homeless. Then pivoted to rage. You ruined my life over a cake. Mom layered on guilt. Sweetheart, she's fragile, you're strong. Be the bigger person. I muted the thread and made coffee. Detachment, not drama. Breathing, not bargaining. By Wednesday, the story moved online. Kendra posted a TikTok. A hoodie, smeared mascara, soft lighting. Caption. When your sister sabotages your future out of jealousy. She cried on beat. Said I abandoned family. Said Leah controls me. Said I'd always hated her glow. The views exploded, 600,000 by Friday. Comments split in half. Protect your peace, girl. Family first, she's cruel. I didn't post a rebuttal. I opened my drive instead. Receipts, screenshots, transfers, lease PDFs. 5 years of help archived without applause. Then I wrote one email. Subject line. For your records, prior agreements. To the landlord and leasing office. Body short, neutral, precise. I am no longer financially or legally affiliated with Kendra. Attached are documents clarifying past assistance and concluded obligations. Please direct future issues to the tenant of record. No heat, only light. I CC'd my attorney for form. Then closed the laptop and watered plants. The piece felt functional, not fragile. Cousin Jordan texted a link. Proud of you. She's farming sympathy. Don't feed it. Another ping from an aunt I barely know. Was time someone told the truth? By Saturday, consequences found oxygen. The condo offer fell through. Landlord requested full income verification. Co-signer no longer eligible. Reality replaced manifesting. Kendra called at midnight, voice sharp with panic. You killed my only chance. No, I said calm. I ended my involvement. Your chances are yours now. She tried a new angle. You could at least post your side. I don't litigate family on apps, I said. I document, then I decide. Silence. Then a final swing. You'll regret this when I'm gone. Guilt as performance art. The oldest trick. I stared at the dark screen until it cooled. Leah brought tea and sat beside me. You don't owe the internet your wound, she said. I exhaled what I'd been holding. I owe myself a boundary. Sunday morning, Mom arrived unannounced. No cake, not yet, just pleading. She's drowning. Throw her a rope. I did, I said softly. For years, she sold the rope. Mom blinked, stunned by plain language. I don't recognize you, she whispered. I finally recognize me, I answered. By evening, the comments shifted tone. Someone posted Kendra's Condo TikTok. The manifesting marble, the price on screen. Receipts have a way of breathing. I still didn't post. I cooked dinner. I watched the light move across our wall. Peace felt like policy again. Not a dream, a decision. They wanted a spectacle. I filed the truth. A week passed. The internet found another fire. My house stayed quiet. I watered plants and answered emails. Leah read on the couch. Peace felt ordinary finally. Then the driveway crunched. Mom's car, unannounced, again. She stepped out holding a bakery box. White, tied with thin ribbon. An apology disguised as dessert. I didn't know what else to bring, she said. I thought maybe we could start. I opened the door halfway. Leah hovered, present but gentle. We stood in the threshold. Mom lifted the lid. 3 tears, sugar roses, imperfect piping. Not our cake, but close. I never wanted to lose you, she said. I was afraid of losing both. So I chose quiet. You chose the louder child, I answered, and called it balance. She's fragile, Mom whispered. You're strong. Strong still bleeds, I said. You just expected me to bleed quietly. Something in her posture softened. I'm sorry, she said. I see it now. Seeing isn't repairing, I replied. Repair begins with responsibility. Silence filled the doorway. Not hostile, honest. She lowered the box, thinking. Is there a way back? Not today, I said. Maybe someday. With work. With truth. She nodded once. No theatrics. No bargain. Just a tired mother, finally listening. She closed the box and turned. Leah squeezed my hand. We watched the car disappear. I carried the cake to the bin. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. Back inside, Leah asked, You okay? I think I am, I said. I didn't just leave them. I found me. We ate dinner and watched the sky darken. Peace didn't feel fragile anymore. It felt like policy. Signed and dated. If you've been called selfish for choosing peace, you're not alone. Choosing yourself isn't betrayal. It's survival. Forgiveness isn't access. My boundary is final.
I've always been the one who caught things early. A low balance. A missed payment. The way Dad's voice changed when he needed something. I noticed everything quietly. That's who I was. That's who they expected me to be. So when the alert came at 2:17 a.m., I didn't panic. I stared at the number for a long time. 38er 11567. Withdrawn. Gone. At first, I thought it was fraud. Some stranger, some glitch. But the longer I looked, the more a different thought settled in one I didn't want to name yet. I sat up in bed. My chest was tight, not from fear, but from recognition. My name is Claire Whitmore. I'm 31. I work in hospital admin, and for most of my life I've been the one who could be counted on until I realized they weren't counting with me. Just on me. I called my father George before I could talk myself out of it. He picked up on speaker. I could hear my mother Donna laughing in the background. Some old country song playing in the kitchen. Hey, Dad. Something's wrong with my bank account, I said. My card's maxed out. Did something happen? There was a pause, a clink of glass. Then his voice tired and patient. You're always so dramatic, Claire. The family needed help. Your mom's prescriptions went up. Your sister's car broke down. We were behind on the mortgage. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Then Mom chimed in same tone she used when I forgot to call on Easter. Light, cutting. Besides honey, what were you gonna do? Buy yourself cake and candles? You can celebrate alone. We had better plans. I remember the silence after that more than their voices. It felt final. And maybe it was. I said calmly, then don't ever call me again. Then I hung up, not out of anger, but because I knew deep down they'd already made that choice first, long before I did. And the thing about betrayal is it rarely screams. Most of the time it sounds like laughter in the background and a country song on the radio. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone or scream into a pillow. That's not how it worked for me. I just sat there staring at the number again and then opened my laptop. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I remembered something Dad once said to me after I covered his second DUI fine family doesn't keep score. It was a clever thing to say, and it worked because I wanted to believe it, so I stopped keeping score. But that night, I started reading the ledger, the real one. I logged into every account with my name on it, Mortgage Mine. They couldn't qualify after the bankruptcy. I had co-signed 5 years ago just until things got stable again. They never did. Auto loan in my name. The truck my sister Haley drove like it was hers, it was, technically. But only because I carried the weight. The insurance, too. Medical loan mine, approved because of my employer's credit union perks. Mom used my identity like a lifeline. Quietly, often. I moved through each tab with the same stillness I'd once used to set up autopay. Back then, it felt like love, like responsibility. Now, it felt like consent I never truly gave. So, I started clicking mortgage canceled. I'd already made the last 3 payments myself. Truck called the bank, repossession in process, medical loan frozen, claimed financial duress. Each action wasn't loud, but it echoed, not in the room, but in me. I opened the shared streaming apps, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, the family phone plan, utilities still in my name, everything they'd quietly hooked into me like IV lines. I pulled the plug, not out of spite, but out of clarity. They had taken what they needed without asking because they assumed the asking wasn't necessary, because I'd trained them not to ask. And I wondered, how many times had I said, I'm fine when I wasn't just to keep the peace? How many birthdays had I covered while they forgot mine? How many late-night transfers did I make while they slept soundly in a house I paid for? They called it family. But the way they used me, it looked more like billing. That night, I didn't sleep. But I didn't cry either. Instead, I opened a new folder on my desktop. I named it simply History. And for the first time in years, I started saving the receipts. The first time I realized I wasn't the child in my family was a Tuesday. I was 12. It was spring, still cold in the mornings. I remember the light flickering in the kitchen. Not dramatic, just dim. Mom was sitting at the table holding an envelope she hadn't opened yet. I knew the color, pale yellow with red print, the electric bill. She didn't cry right away. That always came later. First, she'd sigh, look down at her hands, tap the envelope once then twice like it might change if she waited long enough. Claire, she said without looking up, can you run and grab the change jar from the closet I did? She opened it, counted quarters, dimes. Then she sat back, eyes wet but still dry. That was her trick sad without sound. We're gonna be okay, she said, but I knew we weren't. That afternoon I walked to Miss Lorraine's salon 3 blocks down. The owner was old and sweet, and once told me I folded towels neater than her niece. I asked if she needed help. She looked at me for a second too long, then said, "What do you know about sweeping up hair?" I said enough. I swept every day after school for $4 an hour. Not because anyone told me to, but because it felt like someone had to. That summer the lights stayed on. Mom called it a miracle. Dad said, that's our girl always steps up. They never asked why I did it. And I never told them it was the first time I felt safer being the adult in the room. Some kids have first recitals, first trophies, first kisses. I had first responsibility, and it never really stopped. Looking back now, I think that was the moment the shift happened. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly. The child they were raising became the roof over their heads. And the scariest part, I thought that was love. I used to keep their messages, the sweet ones, the "we're proud of you" texts, the "you're our miracle" Claire voicemails. I'd scroll through them when work got heavy or birthdays got quiet. Mom once wrote, "We don't say it enough, but you're everything we ever hoped for." I used to cry reading that. Not because it made me sad, but because it made me feel seen. Like all those extra shifts, all those quiet sacrifices, had meaning. But the thing about words, they don't hold up well when you stack them next to action. Because while those messages were calling me a blessing, the bills were still coming to my name. The passwords were still mine. The rent reminders, the insurance renewals, the overdraft notices they never told me about until it was too late. I went back to the history folder that night, opened a bank statement from 2 years ago. They'd charged my card for Mom's birthday dinner when I wasn't even invited to, then another. Haley's tire replacement, then streaming upgrades, then wine. Every transaction was small, but it wasn't the dollar amount that broke me. It was the pattern, the quiet expectation, the belief that I would cover the gap because I always had. And if I didn't, they'd say I'd changed. That success made me cold, that I'd forgotten where I came from, but I remembered exactly where I came from. I came from notices taped to our door, from watching Mom fake seizures in the ER to get out of copays, from Dad calling every borrowed dollar a gift so it wouldn't feel like debt. And somewhere along the line, I became their proof of redemption, the one who made it so they didn't have to explain why they hadn't. Every family photo on Facebook I was tagged. Every success story I was the headline. But behind the scenes, I was also the budget line, their miracle child, with a ledger. That night I took screenshots, printed statements, labeled folders, not out of spite, but because gaslighting is easier when you don't keep records, and I was tired of being told I was lucky to give. So I started keeping receipts, literal ones, emotional ones, all of it, because I needed something to hold on to when the memory of being loved no longer felt real. The voicemail came 3 days later. I was folding laundry listening to the soft tumble of the dryer when my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then I played it just once. Claire, it's your mom. Your dad fell, slipped on the porch steps. They say it's a bad break. He's at county. No insurance and they won't do the surgery unless we cover part of the cost. I know you're upset, but this is serious. This is family. Please, just call us. 3 minutes. That's all we ask. Her voice was thin, calculated. I knew that tone. It was the one she used when she wanted to pull me back. Not with love, but with urgency. Not with apology, but need. And that was always the bait. This is family, as if that phrase erased everything before it. I sat down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop. I pulled up my budget, my accounts, my emergency fund. Yes, I could pay it. Easily. It wouldn't break me financially, but it might reopen everything else. So I opened the history folder again, scrolled through screenshots, the time they overdrew my account without asking, the Christmas I spent alone while they tagged each other in family photos, the $38,000 they withdrew on my birthday and called it helping the family, and I realized something that made me colder than I expected. This emergency didn't belong to me. It belonged to the people who had treated me like a debit card for years, people who never apologized, only pivoted, who said we love you with conditions buried in guilt. So no, I didn't call back. Instead, I wrote a check not to the hospital but to myself, a deposit into my peace fund, a reminder that I was allowed to choose myself, that boundaries aren't cruelty, they're clarity. And the guilt, it knocked just like always. But this time I didn't open the door. I texted my cousin Amanda instead. She'd been forwarding me their group messages all week. I wrote, "Tell them I hope he heals, but I won't bleed again to fix their wounds." She didn't reply. Just read it. And went silent. But that silence didn't ache this time. It felt like air. The group chat changed names the next day. It used to be called Whitmore Family Thread. Now it was Core Crew. I wasn't in it anymore. I didn't get a message, no notification. Amanda just sent me a screenshot. No caption. She didn't need one. That afternoon, screenshots kept coming. My mother had posted a Facebook status. "It's always your own who hurt you the deepest." No names. But the comments filled in the blanks. "You raised her too soft. She owes you everything. Kids today, no respect, no heart." And then the private messages started. From old aunts I hadn't seen since high school, from neighbors who once borrowed sugar and now passed judgment like scripture. "Claire, I know it's complicated, but they're still your parents. Your mother is heartbroken. You should be ashamed. Ashamed." That word echoed louder than any of them intended. Not because I agreed, but because for most of my life I had been. Ashamed of saying no. Ashamed of feeling tired. Ashamed of not being able to carry everyone without breaking. They were mourning something I realized. Not my father's leg. Not a family member lost to illness. They were mourning access. Access to my money. Access to my time. Access to the version of me who never asked for anything back. And I let them. I let them scream, grieve, lash out. Because grief at its core is just love with nowhere to go. But I wasn't their daughter anymore, not the one they'd shaped out of obligation and silence. And I didn't need to argue, didn't need to defend, because this wasn't my funeral, it was theirs. The death of entitlement, the burial of the version of Claire they invented to survive. And I wasn't sending flowers. The invitation came in the mail, not through a group text. White envelope, gold trim, handwritten. It was from Ava, my younger cousin, the quiet one. She didn't ask questions when everything went down, didn't forward gossip, didn't press. Just sent the invite with a note, if you come as yourself. That's all I want. So I went. I didn't buy a new dress. I wore black satin. Not to mourn, but to mark something. Not a funeral, but the closing of a door I no longer stood behind. When I walked into the reception hall, I felt them before I saw them. My parents. Dad in a rented tux leaning on a cane like it was part of the act. Mom in a dress 2 sizes too tight, dripping with borrowed jewelry and regret. Their eyes locked on me like I was late to something I had ruined. I didn't flinch. I took my seat next to Ava's college friends, laughed at inside jokes I didn't know, ate the chicken, complimented the centerpieces, and danced. God, I danced. Because joy in that moment wasn't decoration. It was defiance. Halfway through dinner, my mother passed behind my chair. She didn't stop walking, just let her fingers graze the top of the seat, her voice barely above a whisper. You look different. I turned, met her eyes, then answered steady plain. I am. She opened her mouth to say more, but I lifted my hand, not harsh, just final. I'm here for Ava, not you. Her eyes didn't fill with grief. They filled with loss, the kind of loss that only arrives when you realize the bridge is already burned and the person on the other side is no longer waiting. Later during the toast, Dad raised his glass and scanned the room. When his eyes met mine, there was a flicker like he expected a nod, a smile, something to fold back into the old script. I didn't blink, because peace doesn't come from pretending nothing happened. It comes from knowing you don't owe anyone a return to the role they gave you. I left before dessert. No goodbyes, no final words. Just a walk to the car in heels that hurt and shoulders that didn't. And when I got home, I opened my laptop, logged into one last forgotten platform. Autopay, 1 click. And just like that, I took my childhood off repeat. The next morning, I sat at my desk with a cup of lukewarm coffee and a list. Not a to-do list, not a debt tracker. Just a list titled Things I Never Signed Up For. Co-signing the mortgage, covering Mom's dental implants, paying for Haley's car insurance just for 3 months, keeping the family Netflix account running for 6 years, answering every 11 p.m. phone call because someone didn't know who else to call, and then smoothing it all over, with my time, with my money, with my silence. I clicked through tabs like it was muscle memory. Bank login, cell phone provider, streaming services, that one old gas account still in my name from 2019. Each one came with a memory I didn't want but couldn't forget. The time they threw me a birthday dinner? On my dime. The night Mom cried because the house wouldn't feel like home without internet, and I paid it again. The voicemail from Dad saying, just send what you can. We trust you. Trust. That word had always been a leash, disguised as connection. So I opened the last account, the oldest one, a bill I'd been paying since I was 16 and didn't know any better. I stared at the number. It wasn't large, but it wasn't about the number. It was about the story, the one where I was responsible, the one where I was good, the one where I held everyone else's life together even when mine was cracking. And with one quiet click, I took my name off the account. No confirmation email, no confetti. Just a pause. and a breath. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and said it out loud, not to anyone, just to the room. That's the last one. And it was, because the weight doesn't fully lift until you stop holding it in your name. And that day, for the first time in my life, nothing was due. My birthday came. No texts, no cards, no guilt. And then a knock. It was Ava, holding a cake. No cameras, no spectacle. She smiled soft. "You were never the problem," she whispered. "You were just the first to escape." We lit the candles. We didn't make wishes. We just breathed. Because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's closing a door that used to open for everyone but you. And this time, when love arrived, it didn't come with a receipt. I didn't walk away to punish them. I walked away because staying meant losing myself one quiet compromise at a time. I used to think love looked like sacrifice. Now I know real love never makes you prove your worth to keep it. If you've ever chosen peace over permission, if you've ever stopped picking up the phone, not out of anger but out of survival, you don't owe anyone an explanation, just one word or one dot. So I know I'm not the only one who left, and finally started to breathe. For 8 years, I wired money like clockwork. When Dad's cholesterol meds weren't covered, I handled it. When Mom's car needed brakes and Camille's dog needed surgery, I didn't hesitate. Rent, groceries, vet bills, even a down payment Camille couldn't qualify for alone. Somehow there was always something, and I always found a way. I told myself it was love, that this is what family did, that being the one who had it together came with silent responsibilities. I wasn't married, no kids, flexible job. So I became the buffer, the fixer, the one who stepped in quietly so no one else had to worry. Mom used to say, "You're the steady one." Serene, like it was a compliment. But the way she said it made it sound like furniture, dependable and visible. Camille called me practical, but only when I paid for things she forgot to plan for. No one ever asked if I had enough, or if I wanted to be this person. I don't remember the last time any of them asked how I was doing. Last Christmas, I gave Camille's son a new iPad for school. She hugged me in front of everyone and whispered, "You really saved me this month." But when I sat down at the dinner table, she shifted the conversation to how hard it was being a full-time mom and how no one understood her pressure. Mom nodded sympathetically, passing the rolls. I sat there still holding my plate as if the meal might finally include me. At first, I thought I just needed to give more, that eventually if I kept showing up, they'd notice not just what I gave, but who I was. But every time I thought we were getting closer, the next call came. Another emergency, another transaction, another polite thank you with a silence that followed too long. The truth was, they didn't see me. They saw access, stability, someone who could carry their weight without asking for anything back. And so I did until the night I lost everything. The fire didn't even start in my unit. It was the apartment next door, faulty wiring, I think, but by the time the smoke snaked into my hallway, it was already too late. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and a folder with my tax documents. Everything else was smoke-soaked or soaked again when the sprinklers burst into life overhead. I stood outside for nearly an hour, watching flames curl out of the roof like ribbons. By midnight, I was still shaking. Not just from the cold, but from the hum in my chest that no amount of deep breathing could quiet. I didn't know where to go. The hotel near Route 4 was fully booked. The motels near the highway were sketchy enough to make me hesitate. So I drove. Upper Saddle River felt like a different world. Manicured lawns, stone driveways, motion sensor porch lights. The rain followed me there colder now, slicing sideways through my coat. I parked at the bottom of the long drive engine still running as I stared at the warm light glowing behind the living room windows. I tried to tell myself I wasn't intruding, that it was okay to ask, just for one night. I rang the bell once. My mother opened the door in a silk robe, one of the pale ones she reserved for housewear, and stood half in shadow with her arms crossed. The foyer behind her smelled like lemon cleaner and comfort. Camille leaned against the kitchen island in a cashmere wrap, swirling a glass of wine like we were in a TV drama and not real life. "I just need a few nights," I said quietly, "until I figure something out." Mom didn't blink. She let out a long exhale, sharp and slow. "This isn't a shelter, Seren. You're not some refugee." I waited for Camille to chime in, for someone to move to make room, but she just tilted her head, her wine glass still in hand, like she'd seen this scene play out before and was waiting for it to end. I swallowed. Just until I find another apartment. Mom waved a hand toward the darkness behind me. Ask one of those charities you donate to, or maybe a cousin you paid tuition for. Her voice was calm, final. I didn't beg. I just turned and walked back into the rain, the sound of the door closing behind me louder than it should have been. The rain clung to me like skin, and by the time I reached the car, I couldn't tell where my body ended and the cold began. The motel smelled like bleach and lemon, but neither could cover the scent of loneliness that seeped from the walls. I didn't bother taking off my shoes. I just sat on the edge of the bed, letting the weight of what just happened settle into my shoulders. The heater clicked on with a reluctant buzz. I stared at the stained ceiling and felt something in me go quiet, not numb, but sharp, focused. At 4:12 a.m., I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. Bank of America, Chase, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle. One by one, I went through them all. I canceled every recurring payment that wasn't mine: Camille's mortgage, Dad's satellite radio and magazine subscriptions, Mom's grocery card, the joint family phone plan, even the auto transfer labeled household that had been going out on the 15th of every month for the last 6 years gone. With every click, it felt like I was peeling off layers of someone else's life I'd been wearing like debt. There was no anger in my chest, just clarity, cold, precise clarity. I didn't owe them explanations. They'd never asked me why I gave only how much and how fast. So I didn't offer apologies either. I moved through each screen like I was scrubbing dishes no one ever thanked me for. The last account I touched was the trust, the one I set up years ago after a lawyer friend advised me to protect assets in case of emergency. It was modest, mostly untouched, but I removed myself from management and locked it down. No warning, no discussion. By the time the sun began bleeding into the sky, my hands were still steady. I placed my phone on the bedside table and finally let myself close my eyes. The vibration started before 6, a low, constant hum that rattled the nightstand. I ignored it at first, but it didn't stop. When I picked it up, the screen lit with 51 missed calls. 18 from Mom, 20 from Camille. A scattering from Dad, my cousin Alina, even Jace, who hadn't texted me in months. And then there it was. Dead center in the preview of the last message: Camille, don't you dare cut off the mortgage auto pay. Not, are you okay? Not, where are you? Not even, I'm sorry. I let the phone fall onto the thin blanket beside me. The room was still the air stale, but I could breathe in it. They didn't call because they missed me. They called because the money stopped. So I took a shower with the motel's chalky bar of soap and put on the cleanest clothes I had left. Then I reached for my keys. There was one more thing I needed to do. The envelope came just after noon, dropped off at the motel's front desk without a name, just my room number written in a slanted, rushed cursive. The clerk handed it over without looking up. I took it with the same numb fingers I'd used to sign every check for the past 8 years. Back in my room, I peeled it open slowly. Inside were 3 folded documents, old, slightly yellowed at the edges. The header on the first one read, Homeowners Insurance Policy Update. My name was typed neatly at the top, followed by the word beneficiary. But it had been crossed out, sloppily, once in pen and then again with correction fluid. Beneath it in new ink, someone had written in Camille's name. The change was dated 3 weeks before the fire. My hand stilled over the page. I read it twice, then again, as if reading it differently would undo what I was seeing, but the line was too clean, too deliberate. There hadn't been a conversation, no heads up, no explanation. They'd just removed me, like I was an error on a spreadsheet, like I had never kept the policy current, like I hadn't been the one to set it up in the first place using my own credit to qualify when Mom's score was too low. And now, with the house gone, the payout would go to Camille. Not even a shared payout, not even split, just her. It hit differently than the night before. The motel, the rain, the closed door, they were cruel, yes, but impulsive. Emotional. This was cold. This had a signature, my father's. I remembered the red binder Mom handed me last year when a pipe burst under their sink. She'd smiled casual and said, "Just in case." I thought it meant I was trusted, included. Turns out they had already made other plans. I pressed my thumb over the line where my name used to be. Not out of sentiment, but confirmation. I needed to know what I was feeling wasn't just grief. It was betrayal, and it had paperwork to prove it. I folded the documents neatly, slid them back into the envelope, and tucked them beneath my coat. The air in the room felt thinner than before, like the truth had drawn out the last bit of illusion I'd been clinging to. It wasn't just that they turned me away. It was that they'd never really intended to keep me. I hadn't seen Aunt Esme in almost a decade. She was the kind of relative who slipped through family gatherings like a shadow, quiet, observant, never loud enough to be accused of meddling. But when I saw her in the library holding 2 paper cups of tea like she'd been expecting me, I sat down without asking why. "You look tired," she said gently, sliding 1 cup across the table. "That's generous," I muttered, hands wrapped around the heat. It was the first kindness I'd received in days that didn't come with strings. She sipped hers slowly before speaking again. "Your mother used to talk about you all the time. Said you were distant, cold, too practical." I gave a hollow laugh. Even when I bought her that Lexus, Esme's eyes didn't flinch. Especially then. She'd say, "Serene doesn't hug, but she'll hand you the keys to a car." I didn't know whether to laugh or fold in on myself. "I thought she was proud," Esme said, "of your usefulness, not your heart." The words settled like dust in a room I hadn't entered before. "She liked telling people you were the responsible one," Esme continued. "But that was just code for the one we can lean on without guilt. You were the fallback plan, the exit strategy, the one who never made noise." I stared down into my tea. I thought if I kept showing up, they'd finally see me. Not as a bank account, as family. Esme's gaze was steady. "They never wanted your love, Serene. They wanted your resources, and they told you the same lie we've all heard: if you don't give, you don't love. But that's not love. That's control." I felt something loosen in my chest, like a knot I'd been tightening myself for years. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. When I left, I didn't cry. I just walked through the double glass doors with the envelope still tucked under my arm, the air outside sharper than before. Not cruel, just clear. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to see the story for what it really was. Back at the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed with my laptop open and my hands hovering over the keyboard. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, maybe a sense that the world was still turning the same way it had before the fire. Maybe something familiar to remind me that I wasn't the one losing my grip. I typed in the name of the neighborhood Facebook group. I remembered my mother used to post there all the time photos of Camille's volunteer drives my father's retirement brunch, even one of me from 3 years ago when I'd helped repaint their porch. She'd captioned it, "Grateful for family who always shows up." But that post was long gone now. The newest one was pinned at the top, posted 2 hours earlier, "Prayers up for the Duvals." After everything they've been through, losing their home, struggling to rebuild, now this. Betrayal hurts most when it comes from your own. Their daughter cut them off without warning. No one deserves that. There was a photo beneath it. Camille standing in front of the charred remains of the porch, eyes glassy, an expression just right for sympathy. My parents stood on either side of her, arms around each other as if they'd weathered a storm together. I kept scrolling slower now. I heard she was the one funding them. Then just vanished, no warning. That's ice cold. Guess some people forget blood ties when the money stops. My name wasn't in any of the comments, but I was in every sentence. They had scrubbed me out, rewritten the entire script without me. I wasn't the one who had stayed late at night on the phone wiring money across state lines, making sure Camille didn't lose her house, making sure Mom had her prescription refilled. I wasn't the daughter who kept the lights on or made sure the mortgage never lapsed. I was the villain now, cold, heartless, absent. And the worst part was no one would know better, not unless I told them. I closed the laptop slowly, the plastic warm under my palms. The motel room buzzed faintly with the hum of the heater, and for the first time in days, I didn't feel cold. I felt clear. They had their version. Now it was time I started writing mine. The knock came just after 8. Not timid. 3 firm hits, then 2 more like punctuation. I looked through the peephole and knew immediately. My mother standing in the yellow motel hallway, light rain, clinging to her scarf purse clenched under one arm like she was holding something fragile or ready to throw it. I opened the door but didn't step aside. She brushed past me anyway, heels clicking on the cheap carpet like she still owned every room she entered. She turned sharply to face me, arms crossed, mouth tight. "You've created a disaster," she said. No greeting, no preamble. Camille's mortgage is in limbo. Your father hasn't gone to church since the fire. He's humiliated. I said nothing. The words filled the space like smoke curling around the truth she didn't want to name. Her voice rose. "Do you even understand what you've done? This isn't about money, Serene. It's about how we look." I blinked. "That's what matters to you." She rolled her eyes. "People talk. They assume things." I nodded slowly. "Let them." She flinched just barely. I took a breath steady. "For years I gave you whatever you needed. Not because you asked kindly, but because I thought eventually you'd see me not for what I gave, but for who I was." She looked away, jaw clenched. I stepped forward, not threatening, just honest. "You don't get to erase me and still expect my silence." She scoffed. "So what now? You want us to beg?" "No," I said calmly. "I want you to manage. The way I always had to, quietly, without thanks." Her face twisted. "You think you're better than us?" I looked her straight in the eye. "No, I just stopped pretending I was less." That stopped her. She picked up her purse slowly like a judge gathering her robe. "You've changed." I finally stopped apologizing for not being Camille. Her hand hesitated on the doorknob. For a second, I thought she might say something real, something human. But whatever flickered in her expression disappeared. She left without another word. The door clicked shut behind her, and the silence that followed didn't sting. It settled, solid, final. I rinsed my face in the tiny motel sink, grabbed my coat, and stepped outside. The rain had slowed to a mist. I walked without thinking, boots scuffing pavement until I reached the diner across the street. The waitress didn't ask questions. She just poured me coffee and slid over a plate of pancakes I hadn't ordered. I ate them anyway, alone, untouched, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel empty. Back in the room, I opened my laptop and clicked on the file I'd started the night before. Then I began to write, line by line, everything I had paid for, everything they'd taken. The call came just after I'd finished typing up the last entry, April 22nd, $4,000, for Camille's mortgage, marked simply Tyrone out of work. Her name lit up my phone screen like an old, bruised, familiar tender and not quite healed. I let it ring twice before answering. "What do you want?" I asked flat. Her voice cracked immediately. You ruined everything she said, trembling somewhere between panic and accusation. "The bank's freezing the credit line. Mom's crying. Dad's canceled his meetings. No one knows what's happening." I stayed quiet, let her fill the silence with the collapse. "You made us depend on you," she said after a pause, "and then you just walked away. Like it meant nothing." "No," I replied, calm but unmoved. "You chose to depend on me. I never asked for that. You built your life around my silence, not my consent." There was a hitch in her breath, like the words had landed somewhere she didn't expect. "I didn't have a choice, Serene," she whispered. "You had the credit. I needed the mortgage. You said you'd help." "I did help," I said, over and over. But help became habit. Habit became expectation, and expectation turned into entitlement. She didn't argue, just breathed into the phone like she was holding back a scream. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I know I said, but it did. I leaned back in the motel chair, one hand still resting on the laptop's warm keyboard. And now I added, "You'll figure it out." The same way I did. Another pause. Then quietly, "Are you really cutting us off for good?" I didn't answer. Not directly. I just ended the call and set the phone face down beside me. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I felt unhooked, like a weight I didn't realize was dragging behind me had finally come loose. I stood, walked to the tiny fridge, and poured myself the last of the motel's lukewarm coffee. As I took a sip, the inbox pinged again. Another message, another voicemail, another alert. But I didn't check. Instead, I opened a clean document titled, "It Start Here," and began to draft something new. Not a list, not a bill, just a map, a future, mine. The new apartment was small second floor, no elevator. But the key was mine, and my name was on the lease. No shared accounts. No emergency contacts I didn't choose. Just a chipped countertop, a clean fridge, and the quiet hum of space that finally belonged to me. Each morning I made coffee and opened my laptop at the same fold-out table I'd once used to itemize family expenses. The spreadsheet still lived in its folder renamed Proof of Love, not for them to see, just for me. To remind myself that what I gave wasn't meaningless, it was just misplaced. Twice a week I volunteered at a nonprofit downtown, mentoring women rebuilding after financial abuse. I didn't tell them my whole story, but I knew how to listen for the signs, how silence hides struggle, how control wears the mask of kindness. One afternoon, I came home to a plain white envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a letter from one of the women I'd worked with. She wrote, "Because of you, I opened my own account. I feel like my life is finally mine." At the bottom, just 6 words, "You changed someone's life. Thank you." I folded the letter and slipped it into the same folder as the spreadsheet, the one that started it all. That night, I stood by the window, warm tea in hand, and listened not for a call or a knock or a crisis, but for the silence that finally meant peace. And this time I let it stay.